government, their arms around spending and addressing issues like Social Security and Medicare. But I'm not familiar with it, even though I've read it both, and if I showed you my copies, there are that I have questions about and things that I agree with and notes in the margin. I've read both versions of it. I think the second version is a significant improvement over the first one. But I give the congressman a lot of credit, because he's finally said we cannot kick the can down the road to the next generation. We have to address these things. And we have to do it in a dispassionate discourse that is seeking results. There are ways to make sure that our seniors are protected and also our grandchildren are protected. And I am a grandparent. I've got 2 grandchildren. It was for my grandchildren that I decided to get off my chair at work and come and take this goofy task of a year-long job interview. And I'm concerned about my grandchildren. I really am. And I've talked with hundreds, maybe thousands of other grandparents that have the same concern. And as seniors, there's lots of special interest groups that advocate for them, but there's hardly anybody advocating for our children. And I will go there and advocate for both. We need that, and we can get results, but we've got to take the tenor down, and we've got to take the tone down, and really begin to get around these issues that are so difficult.
Terry, I know you're ready for this one. Reaching across the aisle, that'll be an easy one for you. Paul Ryan, and how are we going to get that?
Thank you. You know, both of those questions, or all 3 of those questions, are really part and parcel of something that I wrote about in a book that was given an Editor's Choice Award, on how to change the business as usual politics climate in this country. If you just forget for a moment that there's a left side of the aisle and there's a right side of the aisle, and just open your mind a little bit up, that what we're really fighting as Americans is a mindset that the government can do absolutely everything for you, hand you everything, make every decision for you, tell you what kind of light bulb should be in your house, what kind of taxes you're going to pay for an unrelated service that you're not receiving, have government control every aspect of you. I reject that notion. I believe America was created and it was set on a bedrock of freedom and independence and individual liberty. Just the opposite of what I just said. And then there's a second mindset. The second mindset is business as usual politics framed by leaders on both sides of the aisles that have decided to use and misuse earmarks for political advantage to stay in power forever. I reject that notion as well, which is why I sent out a press release a day ago or so, maybe it was a couple of days ago, saying that term limits are needed in this country. We need constitutionalists and citizen leaders who know when it's time to go home, go back to their own business so that they can pay taxes, they can raise their children. We have 4 grandchildren we're concerned about now, with little Nate being born over the weekend. And we need to change and transform this whole government. And what I suggested doesn't come with an R and it doesn't come with a D, because both sides of the aisle have made their missteps and decided to do whatever it would take to stay in office or stay in this kind of convoluted lobby elected official circle forever. That's got to stop. Those close relationships and business as usual politics is why we spend so much. It's why the public sector makes twice as much money as the private sector. And the private sector is intended to pay for the public sector's jobs and services. Now, if we would do our job constitutionally, we would be using those committees as tools to look for waste, fraud, and abuse. I mentioned the 1,100 agencies. It's time to put together a Grace Commission, very similar to the commission, or maybe identical to what Ronald Reagan did. That way we would review all of the agencies, or at least the critical overspending ones, to see if, number one, they had a mission that they were delivering, that there were objectives, and they were accountable to the American people. Now, when I pick up the Washington Post or other newspapers and magazines that deal with corruption in Madison and in Washington, they all talk about the fraud and abuse in these various programs, whether or not it's in Medicare or whether or not it's the earmarks put in the Medicare bill. There were 5,000 earmarks put in the last Republican Medicare bill. That's shameful. A bill that's so important to our seniors that so many are dependent on it for their well-being. We can do better than that. The deficit is there because we overspend on that mindset. 1, government can do everything for us and make every decision. 2, that earmarks and favors for votes are okay. I'm here to say favors for votes are not okay. It costs us all money, and it's the reason why we overspend. To change things is to stand up with the people that elect you, which is why I'm asking you for your vote, because I need you standing with me. This is no longer a Republican-Democrat argument. This is an American argument. This is how do we put the ideas on the table to solve problems and deliver results. I'm used to that. I've been there, which is why I ask you to look at my track record in the private sector and in the public sector. It shouldn't be about personality attacks, and it shouldn't be about low blows. It should be about ideas that we run for office. Now, the deficit, how do we reduce the deficit? We're going to have to make some serious cuts, not with a scalpel, but with a hatchet. We can't afford the waste, and we can't afford the growth of our bureaucracies. Now, committees in Washington should be doing that, and we need to challenge our leadership on both sides of the aisle to do better. That's why I believe groups like Change Congress 2010 endorsed our campaign. It's why I'm part of the Freshman 50 nationwide, where they looked at our background and they tested our mettle to find out whether or not we'd stand up for the people. These are constitutional groups. They're standing with you in your rights. We can't give bloviations and I'm going to do this and pound tables unless we've got a track record that says we've done just that. And if you can look into our heart of hearts, I think you're going to be able to see who it is you trust. And then go please vote next Tuesday. And if you pull the lever for McCormick, what you see is what you get. It always has been. It always will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I like your comment about we may have to go at this with a hatchet, but then it gets down to whose ox is being gored. I can point at a senior, then I can point at somebody else. It's a very difficult situation, and then the political will seems to wane when we get to that point, because then you have to answer for it. And this is why I try and ask questions like, what, and I would ask you both this, you don't have to do this today, what specifically would you cut? We all talk about cuts and efficiency. What specifically would you do? If you ran your business and more money was going out the door than coming in, what specifically would you do to make that business viable? This is not merely, but it is a very large business, and we do not be able to come up with this. I'll get back to you on that. We're gonna move along a little bit, and I'll give you a chance to respond to that. I hadn't heard this one before, so I think this is a specific kind of request, and we maybe keep this one brief because we have a couple more subjects to do yet. How would you respond to the pending legislation from the EPA, MACT, which stands for Maximum Achievable Control Technology, that would seriously affect paper mills, the only in print, and potentially mean the loss of 7,500 jobs in Wisconsin? Are either of you aware of that, Bill?
I am.
Would you care to speak to that?
Yeah, the paper industry is in trouble with this bill, as many of our paper manufacturers here in northeast Wisconsin will have to make major modifications to their boilers. This is a very, very expensive mandate on the paper industry, and one that doesn't have good solutions. Currently, the technology is not there to get done what they're asking, what the EPA is asking the paper industry to do. I had a gentleman, matter of fact, from Tillman, he told me just the other day, he said, it's like having the government say to you, I want you to have a car within 36 months that seats 9 people, can pull 75,000 pounds of payload, and gets 90 miles per gallon. You know, it's a wonderful thing to set that goal out there, but you can't get to that number. And so this is a difficult thing, and this is a case where I talked earlier about regulations that kind of run amok, and EPA is now attacking the Wisconsin paper industry, who's a major employer here, on something that will provide, from what I've been told, very negligible results. And so it's in the court system right now, but it may require a legislative correction. There are issues with this, and the EPA needs to be stopped on it.
You remember that, Terry?
Sure. I would propose a federal level law that was very similar to one that we passed on the state level with the National Federation of Independent Business, and that was the Small Business Regulation Reform Act. We all know that you're only safe when we're not in session, right? We all know that. Your business are only safe when no regulations are being cooked up, no taxes, no top-down. You're only safe when we just go home and go to festivals so you can tell us what we're not doing and to get going. The Small Business Regulation Reform Act required that all well-meaning state legislators have to write an economic impact statement before they could pass regulations and laws. That impact statement required them to tell you how many jobs would be lost and how much money businesses would lose. Now, we need that kind of safeguard on the federal level as well in order to put the checks and balances in place to protect you. I don't know what else to say except the paper industry is in serious trouble, and unless we allow innovation using new technology like the cellulose for possible alternative energy and transforming some of our paper plants with new ideas and less regulation, we're going to continue to lose that industry in what was a very, very large paper manufacturing powerhouse in this country. I will do everything I can to listen and to put checks and balances in government bureaucracy to make sure that you're not over-regulated. And by the way, the reason we have the Small Business Regulation Reform Act is because former CEOs from this area of paper industries visited my office when I was chair of economic development and said this: we're moving our company headquarters to Europe, not just because we like the food in Paris or Brussels, but because it's cheaper to set up a new shop in Europe than it is to wait for the regulations to approve our new equipment. Now that put a lump in my throat and something in my gut, because I knew families would be losing their jobs. I knew that we'd be losing that paper company, and these CEOs were being honest. That's the only reason why I was so motivated to write that Regulation Reform Act on the state level. We need it on the federal level as well.
Thank you, Terry. Here's a question that came in. I'm not sure what the source of this was. Here's how it goes. Will you fight not to raise, the word is not to raise the retirement age?